Welcome, dear listener, to this new feature, O Catholic, Where Art Thou? Where I take Catholic men away from the false confidence of terra firma onto the unfamiliar, yet more spiritual plane of aquas capsizes. Upon this humble vessel, we shall try and remedy the evils of this world and resurrect the once glorious Catholic male identity, given to us by Christ, which our Western brethren and fellow man have swapped out for shiny new worldly pursuits and technologies. Here today with my dear friend John, who is married to Therese. Therese is Maria's sister.
Which makes us brother-in-laws. Yeah, it's a lovely setting as well, isn't it?
It's a gorgeous setting. Now John, we could take, as you're looking at it, a left, or we carry on down.
No, let's go left.
Go left?
Yeah, for the viewer who can't see, left looks much more treacherous, hazardous, and therefore would be
rude. We're going to have to put the air brakes on here.
It'd be rude to say no, we're going to sharp reverse on the left there. What's the left in sea terminology?
Ooh, is it port or
port side?
Is it? Oh, well done, John.
I did sail as a boy, yeah.
Oh, did you?
Very badly. I hold the record in one club for the most capsizes in a day.
What are some of the principles deep down in John Withers?
Well, I think you can't go wrong from starting with the simplicity of love God with your whole heart and love your neighbour as yourself. That's a great start place.
I always like that thing Bishop Barnes said about, he put it, God doesn't have to create you. That is his kind of act of love, really. Is
yeah,
like you are.
Well, yeah, we love. I've always been drawn to that quote in Scripture that says we love because God loved us first, and that's very much there along what he's saying, isn't it? But like, as in our existence is so much like all to do with love, really. So look, I think I get very. I think like a lot of blokes, maybe not to put us all under one roof, but I think a lot about what I can do. That's the challenge amongst, loving neighbour is that ultimately sometimes, like, often that is loving God, isn't it? As in we're called to love each other so that we can also love God within us. But just in the realities and practicalities of life, like building in time that gives me space to love God. By the way, there's a beautiful heron over there. Wow.
If we had a long lens, John, we could show the dear viewer, but we don't, so we won't.
I'll do an impersonation of the heron.
Come on, 9 out of 10.
Married, 2 little kids, and
once you have children, that is a thing, isn't it? Where you
it's a big change, yeah.
Yeah. And seeing that God loves you is much easier.
Yeah,
because the child absolutely needs you, and you need them in a way, in a big way.
Yeah, when Zelly is my oldest, when she was born, I remember holding her, and her mum wasn't very well, and I said, without prompting and without any planning, I just said to this little baby that I was holding, what did God look like? Because I was like, that just came from me. So she was so fresh and new. I know she's been 9 months in the womb, but it was like, wow, you're so much closer, come from God so recently. And I think that's beautiful to reflect on, isn't it? That we've come, yes, we're going somewhere in terms of our vision and how we should live our lives, and we want to make our way to heaven on this earthly pilgrimage, but at the same time, it's awesome to reflect upon the fact that, we've all come from these little tiny babies that were destined and designed by God, and we all enter the world in our own ways and with our differences. I love the stories of how babies come along, like, as in like how they're born more than how they're conceived. But as in,
pretty funny.
Yeah, but it just, it can, even those little stories can shape us, can't they? Like they do say how we come into the world says a lot about us.
I made declarations when Rupert was born that I didn't make for the others.
That was quite traumatic.
It was very traumatic, but nevertheless, it's kind of outside my usual nature.
Your first one as well?
Yeah, first one, yeah, and it was kind of, what do you call it, a milestone point from being a single guy to being a married guy and a father.
Yeah.
Because I was almost a single dad there and then. I said, all right, I'm going to look after you. And you are kind of genuinely terrified.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, because looking after yourself is hard, John. Yeah, even if you're Elon Musk, some things are going to be hard. Just getting through the day, and then got all these other people to get through the day as well. But just the more you get into it, you forget about those kind of worries and terrors. You can kind of see the wood for the trees and gain confidence and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to go through the valley of darkness, I think. That is a big part of the Catholic rules.
Yeah.
No You can't comfort your way through this. This is the adventure. This is the quest.
I think you're right, and I think in terms of like you talk about zeitgeist at the time and a vision of life as a Catholic man, I think you can't be shy about the fact that there's going to be suffering and hard times. It's just the reality of human life, isn't it?
Well, I'd say it's a reality of human life, but one that the Catholic worldview accepts or embraces, and one
has an explanation.
world.
I think has an explanation for that. Like other religion, just if you don't have it, you don't have it. I think it's the question of why is there suffering and all these things like this. Through Christ's redemption, we're able to give that, or it takes on a meaning that.
But you're not going to get otherwise.
Well, it helps you to survive it, doesn't it? Really, I mean, some really.
It's got a kind of eternal merit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to save you from dark thoughts, is it? Or like.
I think it could remedy. It could steer you away. I do think the rules put you in the way of God, and living a life outside the rules puts you in the way of dark thoughts and even danger in this life.
I think there's a bit of a line, a sort of absolute line on some things, isn't there? Like I know this might seem idealistic, but I don't know. Me and Therese, we will never joke about divorce or separation. As in, it's just like it's a very clear line for me, really. Like it's not something we laugh about because it's just not an option.
I have joked about it a couple of times, just saying Maria will be serving me papers if I don't get home on time. But you did right; it's not an option, and it's a gift, really, to not have that as an option.
Yeah, that's what I mean, and
you've made vows, haven't you? People saying the vows till death do us part and stuff, but it's clearly not a big deal to them. Generally speaking, across the population.
Someone asked, I really don't remember who, but somebody did ask, have you got a prenup around the time we were getting married?
Oh, asked you?
Yeah, I really couldn't, I can't remember who it was. I just remember thinking, gosh, what a out the box thought for me. I'd never thought about that, considered that. It was like, just a simple love equals like, oh, here we go. And to be honest, I haven't got anything to put in a prenup.
Anyway, me neither.
It's talking about suffering, periods in life where there is, darkness and significant disappointment and frustration and.
Put it into the rowing.
Yeah. What do you do with it? Yeah. Ultimately, that's like it's the big picture of hope, isn't it? And I suppose if I was to pin anything on my sort of opening gambit on a big vision of life, I appreciate we've moved past that and I'm coming back to it saying, here we go as an opening. Essentially, it's eternal salvation and hope. That, essentially Jesus is real, that faith is real, that in hope I have an image of the future that inspires me today, not just a happy thought, but it inspires to positive action that shapes my day and projects me towards where I want to be. And that has a huge impact on my day, my month, my weeks, my years, and hopefully on my move towards eternal salvation, which, yes, is through faith and belief. And there's questions there of what does that look like? Does it look like going to church every Sunday?
I should say as well, for these times that we live in where people are not into organised religion in any serious way, in any serious numbers, the thief on the cross is a great hope for anyone. It's implied he's kind of lived a treacherous life.
Yes.
But in his final moments, you could say his suffering is reparation for his sins, because Christ seems to imply that he'll be in heaven with him that day, or paradise. If that's the same thing, I don't know. I did ask recently, is he the first saint? And
interesting.
my betters, John, say not necessarily, but one priest said he's the first canonised saint.
Well, I suppose it's that, so he dies on the cross. Presumably, he does die before Jesus. So then, when Jesus goes down,
he's waiting with the other.
Yeah, but is he at the front of the line or the back of the line?
Good point, well made, John.
He might be at the back of the line.
Yeah, I'm going to go.
Someone who's been waiting there a very long time.
Yeah, he's going to say,
hey,
dude,
hold on. It's interesting that, isn't it? Like that, it's nice to think about heaven. I think we don't think about it enough. Quite tricky to think about. What is it? And I know we have images of feasts and.
As long as there's gravity and football available, very
without
easy going.
Subscription.
Yeah, very easy going on the rest of it.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah, it's not kind of.
But not easy to think about.
Yeah, not easy. And it's not an obvious thing to turn your mind towards.
Yeah, and it's interesting how it says something about the human psyche, doesn't it? That it's easier to think about hell. It's
Yeah, it is.
easier to dramatise it, to act it.
Fear is a great motivator, John.
Yeah.
And I kind
Look
of
at recent societal experiences.
Say again?
Recent societal experiences.
Yeah. I mean, our critics may say, well, we shouldn't have to live in fear all the time, but it kind of doesn't work out that way. You know, I would still stand by, you know, mortal sin. One mortal sin could cost me because I'm a kind of, what I might say, a serious practicing Catholic.
Yeah.
It might cost me more seriously than a guy who's not a Catholic and stuff like that. You know,
Well,
God
the church would say it would.
Say again?
The church would say it would.
Yeah, it would
if
still.
you have knowledge of it.
Yeah, knowledge of it. But my day to day, I'm not kind of trembling. You know, I don't go around like Gollum or something. I'm generally upbeat, love my children, love my wife, blah blah blah, all those kind of good things. But
we have to be really
and what
careful
men need,
that
and I would say that what men need, you know, when you don't give men clear direction, you're going to get the likes of what you've got now of commitless marriages that break down quickly.
Yeah, but it's like it's a bit like you can't, because it's what you said there about the mortal stuff. It's like, well, you can't just think like that. You've got to think about the small things. As in, like, it's a bit like being in school. So I teach, and I know that for my sins, I know that if I don't enforce the small things, then and it's the same with family, isn't it? And it's just the same societally. We've got to hold on to these small things. I think it was Therese that went to confession. Thank God. No, I'm joking. She an inspiration in pretty much all things. She went to confession, and a while ago, years ago, and the priest said to her something like she was. I think she said to me she was worried about big sin. This might have been me, so I'm sorry if it was me, Therese. But she was thinking about what she might consider to be big sins, which probably, like Saint Therese, was like, I killed a butterfly or something, you know. Anyway, and the priest just picked on the tiny thing, and I've always remembered that story, and it's happened to me a couple of times, but not in a sort of noteworthy way. But I think it's so true, isn't it? Like, we can sort of weigh up our own selves, and yes, it's true. There's the genial and there's the mortal.
Venial.
Sorry, genial is a very different thing. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at in the moment. Is like, okay, moving forwards towards heaven. There's a question about society, isn't there? Like, how do you navigate life in that situation? But going in that direction, please God, with an eye on trying to improve some of these small things, these habits, these vices, these virtues, like either get rid of them or shape them up. And some of them are not like big things or extreme things, but they have such a day-to-day impact. And it's like I'm lazy if I don't sort them out.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm unhelpful to my friends and family if I don't sort them. Yeah, so I agree with you. Kick the mortal, and
to do that ultimately comes down to, once you stay in the game,
work on the venial.
You got to hit the small sin. Really kills the mortal.
If there's people struggling with like significant mortal sins, like, you can get really caught up in that mindset of like, I've got to fight this and solve this, and sometimes taking like a step back and just looking at what are the small things around that, you know, and working on them for a while is.
Yeah, I do like the church is into the occasion of sin, John. That is a great one.
Huge, isn't it?
Yeah, huge.
Anyway,
John, you've done all this hard work and we're gliding back down. I'm tempted to take a leap.
Yeah, go on, mate. I mean, this is not a good place to get out.
It's not a good place to get
That's
out.
better. Let's back up.
Yeah, I've missed my chance. There was the service station just to the left. What can we do as Catholics to kind of really benefit the world? You can say, all right, well, you know, use less carbon emission and all that kind of stuff. But the real stuff is forming communities, your marriage, your children, getting together with other families. Your thoughts on that, John? And I might preface it by saying, it's not kind of beta male stuff. It takes a lot of work, and it appeals to the man's sense of adventure, which we can go into the details of. But Catholic marriage is not a poor substitute for a man's kind of desire to live a adventurous life. You are kind of domesticated. Anyway, I'll come back to that.
No, I agree. I think we're just a society at such an interesting point, aren't we? Because like. What it means to be a Catholic man today, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, like, and a Catholic family, it's like, it's shifting, isn't it? As in the way it's lived as society has moved around it. There's sort of two thoughts here. One is about, okay, well, you know, yes, the Catholic family, and the other is about how it fits in society. Which do you want to speak about?
Well, I want to speak about.
Just focus more on the positive, and like what is.
Well, no, I don't care about the negative. All the positive, John, kind of language I slightly reject. So I'd say being married, staying married, working, building Catholic community.
Go here, Pete.
It takes some serious masculine traits to do. It's not a. Oh, John can nip out there, yeah. You're not going to come away from that after a couple of years and think,
All right, yeah.
I'm living a kind of beta-male life.
No, you need to.
It's a real test of everything you've got.
Yeah, go on. I'll speak about that. I'll let you go to the toilet first. Just go out forwards. Oh yeah, you might not get back in.
Yeah, let's do it. I can hold it.
Don't know if I can hold it now. Rough, isn't it? You should bring a potty with you, Peter.
Yeah, I should next time. We always keep one in the car. We've both been married a decent amount of time. I'm 10 years. You think, what, you've married about 5 years?
No, only 3.5.
3.5.
Lots of experience.
All
right, let me just say what it's been.
Marriages
like
are breaking down now for men in our position.
Yeah.
In the culture.
Well, what I will say is, like in my working situation, I mean, I'd say commonly amongst people I know, it's relatively unusual for someone to get married in their 20s, start having kids, and just seemingly crack on with life in that way, which is
a real problem.
But it's also like, that is. Talk about the nuclear family. That's that, isn't it? You get married quite young, you have kids, you crack on, sort of thing. That's not life in 21st century Britain, is it? So, anyway, but for me, it's been a huge, changing life experience. You like anyone, you get a partner, you hook up together, you find a house, you move on with your life. But this is something where there's a deep dedication, lifelong, to each other. So, like I was joking about earlier, there's no like mention of like divorce or separation, as in like just even in our thoughts, as in like we're like committed. So like when there's a difficult moment, of which for sure there are.
Sure as night turns to day, John.
For sure there are. We all have them personally. We have them in relationship. But that's like the real shaping ground of us as people, isn't it? You have your edges knocked off, and you're called to be more, aren't you? So I think be heavenly like your father's. Be perfect like your heavenly Father is perfect. It's not attainable in this world, but it's what we strive for. And so any sort of knocking of edges, any frustrations, it's like, all right, this is hard, but it's not impossible. I always remember Monsignor John Armitage, who at the time was the rector of the shrine in Walsingham, gave this homily, and he went through all these really hard situations, and he said, that's hard, but it's not impossible.
Can hear him saying it.
Yeah.
We know his voice.
And I've always remembered that, his voice saying that, and I'm like, this is hard, but this is not impossible. And I sort of feel like that's the story of the church, isn't it? And the message of the saints, really. This is hard. Like you think about the saints and the awful situations that they went through, for many to the point of martyrdom, and it's like, to the world that seems like you've lost, like it was impossible.
But I would say it seems like that to the world, because death is one of the worst things that can happen to you. As a Catholic, death is not the worst thing that can happen to you.
Yeah, and exactly that.
And
that's the hope, isn't it? That's the vision. It's like, well, ultimately, my idea of death is so different that it impacts how I live my life in the day to day.
Like on 9th, there's that heron just gliding in. Just maybe see it on the background. Ooh. And John, would you say, because you've been married a while now,
should we have a cup of tea here?
John, perfect time.
I think we should have. I mean, we both need wheeze, but we should have a cup of tea.
Yeah, let's have a cup of tea. Come all this way.
Just like the viewer to know that it was pouring with rain all morning, and as soon as we put the boat in, the rain disappeared.
So marriage, hard times come, yeah. And when the going gets tough, people separate. Yeah. But when you get through it, you come out the other end, I would say, you love your wife more, you love your children more. You're not kind of slowly chipped away to becoming more bitter, more crusty, more of a pain in the arse to be around. You get purified by the experience of hardships. If you kind of take on the with the sacraments as well, we've not really mentioned them yet, but it's hard to mention everything in just a short space of time. In loving the one, and being committed to that, you do set yourself up for a kind of a better way of loving people and to be loved, a better experience of marriage and love and stuff like that. Yeah. All those kind of warm feelings, John.
Yeah. Well, you're growing your heart, aren't you? I've always loved the phrase, the word became flesh and pitched his tent among us. But just, pitching his tent, and there's another phrase about widening the bounds of your tent, or something like that. But those images of tents, I like camping, but they've always meant something to me about, gosh, there's this space in me that can get bigger.
Handbrake turn here, John. Let's give it some power.
Which way are we going? This way.
Oh, yeah.
There's a space, in me, which is, it can get bigger, which is my heart. It can grow and it can embrace more. And it's that interesting thing when you have another kid. It's only happened to me once, but having two, where you're like, oh yeah, I don't know how
People say that, don't they?
Like, yeah, I don't know how this one will fit in, sort of thing.
It's
or
a secular phrase.
where
It's
will
a
it
real
fit?
secular phrase, isn't it?
But you just got to live the experience, haven't you? And just be like, oh, like, obviously it fits everywhere. Like this new child is.
It's a failure of imagination, I think, to say you can't. How are you going to love the next child as much as?
Yeah, I think it's a
Someone
misunderstanding of like how love works, how our hearts work.
Yeah, dead right.
Yeah. But look, I've lucked out in many ways because I've been extremely blessed because I met a girl who was absolutely beautiful and especially on the inside, and how we used to joke about that a lot, but she's absolutely beautiful in every way. It calls me to be better than I am, and doesn't settle for me being mediocre. And I'd say that's something I'm working on, like how I want to
That's the gift of a good marriage.
to respond with that as best I can, and I think that's I'm just so inspired by how she does that, and I think that is marriage, isn't it? Like going and friendship, basically going together as far as you can.
Yeah.
And it's Saint Thomas Aquinas' idea of friendship, that the fullest friendship is where you're fixed on the horizon, you're walking together. Favourite Christmas film, Peter?
Oh, tough one, John. Probably Die Hard 2.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. I just love the controversy, along with 51% of Britain. I only watched the classic What a Wonderful Life recently.
Really, it is a great
Black
film.
and white, 1950, whatever.
I can only watch it once though.
Exactly.
Die Hard
I'll probably
too
never
many
watch it
times.
again.
Yeah.
I did really, really enjoy it though.
Yeah, it is really enjoyable.
Reminiscent of the Screw Tape Letters and the angle of like coming from the angels.
Yeah. Shall we get in the bank here with your tea, John? Before the home stretch.
Oh wait, you want to just stay in the boat?
I think let's stay in the boat, John.
Alright, you could jump onto that up bit if you wanted to. I really need a wee though.
Oh, no bad news.
This is some good viewing for the people that live in these houses though. That's it, just drift it in. Lovely, lovely jabbly. Uh-oh.
Yeah, we should have gone parallel into it.
We'll go forwards into there. If we go ramming speed, this is perfect. Hold on to the camera. Oh no, we missed it. Oh,
Oh, that's all right. That's brilliant.
all right, okay. Oh, jeez. Don't know. We won't get back in.
Yeah, good point well made.
Let's just go.
We're not far off.
Let's go back. We'll have a cup of tea on the porch.
Great A for effort, I think. Oh, that's...
Did you ever consider not being married?
Yeah, I was so terrified, John, of the wife you start off with just becomes a bit po-faced, run down by the enormity of practical tasks. I did put that kind of view on women that I would see, especially in 2000. I knew when they were single, I thought, wow, you're something special. A great girl. And then you see them like 5 or 6 years after being married. It's not that the fun had gone out of them, John. And I thought, gosh, maybe that's just what happens when you get married. The fun goes out of people, and that really did put me off, actually. It's not that I don't have any...
There's a lot of fun though comes from like community and friendships, I would say. For us, it's been one of the biggest challenges, especially like regards COVID. Watch out. We got married and then sort of straight into COVID, so how do you, like, all community sort of ended, obviously for everybody, but I think it's just a reality of marriage. Like if you're, especially in a society where we move so much, so people move for university, they maybe they don't live by their families, like that's an interesting thing when you talk about Catholic marriage.
I would more mean it from the death of personality. I've not found that to be the case, actually. I kind of love the small talk of marriage. I find it hugely entertaining, full of drama and a great gift. But that was my fear, that it would not be like that. It would be monotonous tasks and reporting in for duty and things like that. And I just did not like the idea of that, actually. I looked at a lot of husbands and thought, you've really given up the fight, actually. John, I have to say that. John, all that effort has kind of helped my bladder fight the swell.
It's going to work for the future explorer. Watch out for the island. Who's in charge of steering this thing?
Yeah, this guy. Who is this guy? Joker.
Yeah.